Good evening. My name is Amy Ballsball. I am Programs Director at San Francisco Children's Art Center. I am the person who has been emailing you multiple times a week for the past couple weeks while we got our schedule all confirmed and set. I want to thank you all for your patience as we work through that process. I promise you will stop hearing from me so frequently now, and the fun part of our work together and our partnership is about to begin with our artists coming into your classroom next week. Um, I want to start off our evening. I'll start by saying, give you a little lowdown on what we're going to accomplish in the next, hopefully, half an hour or so. I have a short slide deck that I want to share with you all that will give you some background on our organization, as well as what to expect with your artist residency coming up in your classroom. And then we will pause for some Q&A and have some time to answer specific questions that you may have. With that said, you can always message me at any time with any questions or comments or feedback or anything. So we always like to start off these events with a land acknowledgement. And we have something that we've crafted, some wordsmith that we shared with actually the Ramaytush Ohlone Cultural Group that is one of our partners at Fort Mason Center. We have our studio. So our artists wrote this. The San Francisco Children's Art Center respectfully acknowledges that our work occurs on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, and we affirm their sovereign rights as the original stewards of this land. The Ohlone understood the interconnectedness of all things, and we honor their people and their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. So thank you. And now I'm going to share a slide deck. Okay, so this is us this evening. And just to share a little bit about our organization, we are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1978. And since our inception, our mission has been to empower children to develop their sense of self through creative exploration. And our influences since day one have been, Reggio Emilia inspired process, as well as a social constructivist philosophy. If you remember back to your ed days with Piaget and Vygotsky, we really believe that art is a way of learning through social interaction and learning from peers. And then we also more recently have embraced, Harvard Project Zero's studio habits of mind and making learning visible and all of the amazing work that's coming out from Harvard and those places. And our values as an organization, our work's firmly grounded in the belief in children's competence. They are capable and they're curious and they are problem solvers and decision makers and negotiators and communicators. And we recognize that they seek to make meaning from their experiences. And I think we all know, as people working in the early childhood sphere, that young children aren't given the respect and admiration that they deserve by society at large. And we know, working with these young people, that they are so competent and so able to take on so many tasks if we just create a situation and scaffold the situation where they can succeed. So that is deeply embedded in our work, as well as a commitment that we have to equity and justice. And we just base our work in an unconditional respect for children and empowering them in hearing and validating their feelings and their ideas and their experiences, and fostering self-expression and hearing their voice and supporting their communities. We have our artists got together a few years ago and created an entire frameworks to supplement our curriculum around our beliefs of the work that we do towards the goals of anti-racism and anti-bias. And I'm going to put a link in the chat right now where you can click to see that document that our team worked together to create with the support of a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant. And then for those viewing this video later, you'll be able to, I'll also share the slide deck and you'll be able to click to our anti-racism, anti-bias frameworks from the slide deck. So we're coming in with a process-oriented approach to art making, and many of you may be familiar with this already or heard about the idea of process over product. We have this cute little infographic here that kind of talks about what being process-oriented is and what it is not. So looking, starting what it's not is it's not formulaic. We don't teach with step-by-step instructions that children have to follow to learn. Instead, we look at the way that we engage with children in art making as an invitation to sustain their learning. We recognize that learning happens in the act of doing. It's not, the product that's created. That's just the artifact of the learning experience. We're also anti-hierarchical. We don't believe that children are the passive recipients and we're the quote unquote experts who are coming in to fill their empty vessels with our wealth of knowledge. We like to think of our work as co-learning, and that we, negotiate and approach the curriculum with the students, where they initiate the learning and they have opportunities to be self-directed. And it's our teaching artists' role to facilitate that exploration and to create the circumstance in which they can then be self-directed. And, our work is not laden with expectations. There's no right or wrong answers. We don't have some predetermined or pre-described thing that we're trying to accomplish or the way that the art is supposed to look at the end of the engagement. Instead, we want to be more child-centered and we want to empower children as agents of their own learning and have their discoveries validated. So we train our artists to support children in this learning and have developed our curriculum that supports that happening. So there are kind of two main components that we look at in our approach, or the way that we take our approach. And I have one staff member who always says it's deceptively simple, or he says it's deceptively complex. It looks very simple, but it is very thoughtful in the approach. But basically breaks into kind of two areas. First, we want children to explore the properties of the material at hand, whatever art material we're working with that day. It's about them gaining an understanding of that material and how it works. And then discovering how they can use that material in new ways and tie it to their own ideas and use it to express their own ideas. And the benefits of taking this approach versus a more step-by-step instruction is that, it promotes flexible thinking. There's no one solution. There's no one way. You can work your way around a multitude of solutions, and children see from their peers all of the different ways that problems can be solved. It encourages observation and noticing what's happening as you work with the materials. It encourages hypothesis making and testing. What happens if I try this? Well, let's see. It builds competence and confidence, getting your hands on the materials and making your own choices about what you want to do with them. Empowers you, makes you feel competent. And then competence precedes confidence. Once you feel competent, then you become confident. It's not the other way around. And then sparking imagination. We know they're imaginative, so this is just some opportunities to make that happen. And then we also look for ways that art making can foster interaction between peers and collaborations and play together. and working towards something, creating something as a group, as a small group, or as a whole class. And then meaning making, when you create something, they're going to tell you what it is, whether or not in our adult lens, in our adult eyes, it looks like the thing they say, it means it to them. And we try to honor that as much as we possibly can, hear those ideas and validate them. I won't play this now in the interest of time. You will get the slide deck and you'll be able to click on this. I would strongly recommend watching the entire 20-ish minute video, but there's a crucial 5 minutes in there where Zaretta Hammond, who's local San Francisco daughter, become nationally acclaimed education scholar. Her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, is a great read if you haven't read it already. There's an excerpt in this video that I strongly recommend that you watch. It starts at about minute 6 and ends at about minute 11. And it's talking about how experiential learning creates an academic mindset. And she very specifically talks about early childhood education. So if you're ever feeling a need for a little bit of a booster to remind you of what you do, why you do what you do, I strongly recommend watching this. For our team, it was very affirming that her thinking is so in line with the way that we think and the way we approach. It was very affirming. So please take a couple minutes if you're watching this later and click on that and let that fill your psyche. Oops. So when we come to your classrooms, here's a few things that you can expect. We are doing a 14 session, once a week residency. This is new this year. Prior to this year, we were doing 8 weeks. And we'd chosen 8 weeks because it would allow us to serve more classrooms with being able to squeeze in 3 cycles of 8 weeks in a school year. But both us and SFUSD's art department kept getting feedback that folks wanted longer. They wanted more time with their artists to build those relationships and to go deeper. So we are shifting to 14 sessions with 6 new engagements to share with your classrooms. We're coming in, ideally it's 45 minutes a week. On occasion, we do have to go a little shorter if your lunch or recess schedule doesn't allow for that long of a session. But when we've got 45 minutes, we can really fall into what we call the art zone. And we'll have, for classrooms with more than 10 students, we will send 2 teaching artists. Our artists are professional working artists, but they are also trained in education strategies specific to early childhood ed. And they are trained to facilitate our curriculum, which we've developed over the years, which we call Thinking Through Materials. And this curriculum, it's aligned with visual arts content standards. It's designed, its scope and sequence, has a sort of arc of student growth where we start with activities that require less dexterity and motor skill, and we build towards more complex multi-step engagements as the 14 weeks progresses. Each lesson is going to have a specific learning objective, but we, particular arts learning objective, but we do so in a way, we facilitate in a way that keeps it open-ended and makes lots of space for students to make their own choices. And we facilitate simple choices that they get to own and create with. And then you'll see lessons around line and shape and color and texture and form and composition. And you'll get a variety of art materials and a variety of techniques. We'll do drawing and painting and collage and color mixing and sculpture and printmaking and mixed media things. And yeah, we have a lot of different exposure to a lot of different materials, including multiple weeks of sculpture exploration with different materials. And then we focus really heavily on supporting social and emotional development. things like sharing materials and turn taking and practicing our speaking and listening skills as we share with each other ideas and fostering connections between peers. Art making is a really um, earnest, authentic way to connect with other people. So we try really hard to foster and maximize the opportunities that creates. And we will also really embrace the opportunities to make accommodations for students with specific needs. So, whatever you can share with us while respecting student privacy, anything that you can share around student needs, we will make sure that they can participate to their fullest capacity. We are fortunate that we have one staff member who has his master's in early childhood special education. So he is a great resource for us to tap, even if he's not working in your classroom. He will support his colleagues with accommodations and making suggestions. And any information that you share about your students will be held with discretion and the utmost confidence. So please know that if you do share information with us, we will keep it close to our chest and make sure that we make that work happen, make art time happen for all students in your class. And then the last little note on our curriculum that our day 14 is what we call TBD day, to be determined. We have a lot of flexibility with that engagement. It can be a revisiting of a favorite activity. We're envisioning maybe some student voting perhaps, or sometimes our teaching staff has something that they love to do with students that's not on our standard curriculum that they'll offer. Another opportunity could be to invite parents or caregivers to come for a family art day in the classroom during your art time, and they could participate side by side with their child. If you wanted to take a turn at designing a process-oriented engagement with the support of our artists, that's something we could do on day 14 as well. So your teaching artist will connect with you about day 14 and hear your ideas, and we'll have a really neat kind of culminating experience on that last day of the residency. So mention that our artists are professional working artists who are trained in arts education techniques and strategies. I thought I would run through a few of the strategies that are most crucial to our approach. The first is just routines. You know this as early ed teachers, and we are sharing this with our artists as well. And when they come to your classroom, you can expect that we'll start in a circle on the rug, or if you prefer rows, we can do that. Whatever your typical seating arrangement on your rug is, let's kind of keep that moving together. And they'll introduce the activity, and they'll front load some key vocabulary. We use a lot of gestures. Whenever possible, we send artists who speak Spanish to predominantly Spanish speaking classrooms if the scheduling permits. Sometimes scheduling doesn't permit, which is disappointing, but our artists have gotten very, very good at connecting with students, even if home languages are different. And we also have a ASL bank, a visual arts term. So we're learning ASL to go with that as well. And then we'll break away from the rug with art making time at the tables. And then we'll do a very short collaborative cleanup, recognizing that, the majority of the cleanup will be happening by our artists, but it's important that we teach children how to participate in, taking care of materials and being respectful of their space and where they create. And then, time permitting, we'll return to the rug for sharing and reflection and closing. But there are times when, if we're out at the tables and the kids are totally in the zone, the artist will kind of have a quick conflab and say, hey, let's skip going back to the rug because they're still really having this amazing, experience or being super productive with their art making, and they'll do a more informal reflection at the table. So that's just to note. And then if you have any students who are neurodiverse, where a visual schedule is helpful, we do have portable visual schedules, and we can use those. So please let us know if you have any students who really benefit from that extra support. We can make sure they bring their portable visual schedules with them too. Next strategy we use is what we call curate the art materials. We choose the materials we use each week really intentionally, and we select those that allow for open-ended exploration. And we really simplify the materials so that it really is about understanding the material and how it can be manipulated and transformed to express ideas. And then we'll introduce them really carefully. We'll start with, for example, like, please just take one, the creative constraints of less is more. And we want students to really understand the material. And if we put a giant art buffet out on the table with every material we're planning to use that day, we know it's developmentally appropriate for children to grab and hoard. So we kind of like try to push back against that impulse, and we instead will be more thoughtful with the way that we introduce the materials and work on like turn taking and having a more intentional engagement with the material. And then we also try to offer choice. Present things on a tray. Which one would you like to use? Which color would you start with? What size do you want? Um, we just want to make opportunities for them to be in charge of the choices that they make with their materials. And our third strategy is just to spark that engagement and to spark their curiosity. We rely heavily on engaging the senses, whether it's sound or touch or feel or smell. Often we'll put like materials in a box and we'll shake the box before it gets presented. Just anything that's going to kind of hook them into, being engaged and interested. And then we always look for opportunities to build on prior knowledge, whether it's a previous art engagement we did that we're circling back towards in a different way, or if it's something that they know in the world. For example, like when we do our texture exploration, we talk about textures and things that they know that are bumpy and things that they know that are smooth. And then we'll always begin our art explorations with what the Italians in Reggio call the provocation or the challenge, the thing that kind of gets your mind thinking. And then we always frame it as an inquiry, something, how can we, dot, dot, dot. So, for example, in this photo, you see the activity you're going to see in your classroom called string drawing. How can we make a drawing using a piece of string? And in this picture, you'll see too, children are covering their eyes. This is at like the end of the class after they've drawn on the carpet with their strings, and we pick them up. Before we pick them up, we have them close their eyes to see if they can still see their string drawing. So it's a very ephemeral activity, but it's amazing how many times they can still cover their eyes and picture in their minds the things that they made with string on the carpet. Hmm. Another strategy we use, we call it dare to wait. It is an intentionally slowed pace of engagement. We are seeking to provide some uninterrupted time for students to explore and discover rather than having the constant kind of barrage of instruction and now do this, now try that. We'd like to kind of take a big deep breath, settle into the exploration, and let them just sort of have, some time to like explore. And it's not necessarily making the product, it's just getting their hands on the materials. And, we're big believers in learning through productive struggle. We want to allow students the time to kind of stew in the challenge. And we hold back on that desire to jump in with what we call a rescue mission. Um, we want to have students, their processing speeds are different from us as adults. And we need to remind ourselves to give them the space to come at this at their own entry point and on their own terms. And it can be hard sometimes to watch someone, what is productive struggle versus just struggle. And you know your students well. If you have students who have a very low threshold for frustration, anytime that you can tap our artist on the shoulder and say, yeah, he's going to need a little bit more support, or he's probably going to need some help. If your students, if that's something they can handle frustrations or not. But I also would recommend that you allow them to surprise you sometimes with what they can do. So we'll just, everybody will keep an eye on keeping the struggle productive. And then we always think about strategic timing of introducing new materials in every lesson that we have. We will kind of level up with a new material that's something that helps to re-engage students' attention if it starts to fade. And that also, again, going back to that strategy around introducing materials thoughtfully, that we'll, wait to introduce the adhesive or wait to introduce a second material until the first one has been, explored completely. And then a strategy around like collective learning. We are big believers in, social constructivists, peer-to-peer learning and supporting that. You'll almost never see our artists demo how to do something. With the exception of when there's a language barrier. Sometimes, if, we don't speak the same language of the student and they're not able to discern from, visual cues, what they are to be doing, we will sometimes, specifically demo, but we try to avoid doing it because it sends the message to students that like, you don't know how to do this, we know how to do this, and we're going to show you. So what we try to do instead is we'll kind of sit back and watch to see a student who figures it out or discovers it. And then we like enable them and empower them as the experts who can demo for their peers. It's kind of a non-hierarchical approach that we like to take, and it empowers students, and it's that, that proximal development zone that we know is a great way for students to learn from one another. And then we just like to think of art making as a communal, community interaction rather than an individual pursuit. It's a journey that we take together as a group or a class. And we want to have our art making time hopefully will help to foster, a collaborative learning environment that I'm sure that you have as a goal in your classroom, where students feel like they are part of a larger whole and an important part of a larger whole, where everybody has something to contribute and share. So as much as our art making can support that goal in your classroom, we are there, right there with you. And then we also, try really hard to support reflective dialogue and, to help build speaking and listening skills with students. We always want to give that space for them to assign their own meaning and to, name what they've created. And we try to avoid, putting any sort of guess on what it is that we're representing. So even if, someone's put a square on the bottom and a triangle top, and like a little rectangle and two squares inside that square, we will resist saying, oh, it's a house. We'll let them say it's a house, because maybe it's not a house, maybe it's a rocket, or maybe it's something else. So we don't want to assign that meaning. We want to give them the power to do that. And we also avoid those aesthetic judgments like, oh, so pretty, because when you say that, this is the opportunity for a broader, a more open conversation where they get to actually describe their work versus us just putting value on it. So we listen really carefully what they say, and then we'll repeat and amplify what they say about their art. And then we want to support, when students have ideas that connect. Oh, I see this person has the same idea, or validate differences of approaches or differences of ideas and multiple ways that that children solved the challenge for the day. And then we know that, children this age are expert at off-topic conversations. So we give our staff tips on positively redirecting those off-topic conversations. And if you are able to jump in and support with that, that's always appreciated too. And then shy or nonverbal students, we will go in and, hold up their art for them and point out things that we notice. Oh, I noticed you put lots of blue paint in this area here. Everybody notice that blue paint? Yeah, check that out. So even for students who don't talk a lot, we want to make sure that they have this opportunity to be esteemed by their peers. And then we always will use some silent applause or a gesture of appreciation during sharing time. And then our last strategy is, the idea of making learning visible. Sometimes with process oriented art, it's not about the product, but we know that it is really great to share experiences and to think about things like bulletin boards and how you can put together a bulletin board that demonstrates, the experience that the students had and the learning that happened, and not just pinning it up on the wall. So we look for ways to collaborate with you, to do things like, when we're having sharing time, to annotate the ideas that get expressed. Even on like a post-it, you'll see on the picture on the left here, the Mateo, the student, has quotes about what he was saying, about this texture. He created this texture rubbing, and you'll see that it's in quotes that those are his exact words. And then taking photos, during the process of creating, it's important for students to see themselves in the act of creating so that they begin to identify as being a creator. Um, and then, we will add, you can always tag us to get, what was the objective of the lesson? What was, the prompts that we use, the open-ended inquiry prompts that we use to get things going. If you wanted to create little write-ups around the engagement, we'd be happy to, support and share that information. If you wanted to create a bulletin board about this, and I'll share a little bit later some opportunity to get some additional support with that if you choose. And then, you could also think about your class email newsletter or class website. And then, you might also consider, as students' work gets created, saving all 14 weeks of work into a portfolio. If you have like a little hanging file folder or something with a folder for each student, you can just tuck it in each week. And then at the end of 14 weeks, they'd have a really great portfolio that demonstrates, their growth over time. So food for thought. Here's another video I won't play now, but you'll get the slide deck link, and you'll be able to link to this. This is just a short 3-minute video that talks about, some of our strategies and has some video footage of using it in the classroom. Oops, skip this one too. And then here's another one that we made, around, well, we made this during pandemic actually, to support families in supporting their children's creative development at home. And we realized it was just some really powerful language and really great to share and frame the way that, we approach our work. And you can just see some great images of things that our students and things they created over the years. So then, for you, as our partner teacher, there's a few things that you can do that really help to make the residency a success. For those of you who've already done that pre-residency questionnaire, thank you so much. I'm going to, put the link to it in the chat for anyone who hasn't yet done it, but most people have, so good on you. Thank you so much. And then, you'll be able to link there if you're on the slide deck later for those watching the recording later. And then, if you didn't do so already, if you could split your class roster into 2 groups, since we're sending 2 artists to most classrooms, it's really great when, the artists can work with the same group of children each week. So whether that's your usual table groups or if it's special art table groups, um, whatever you decide, it's just really nice for building kind of long-term relationships with students if, our artists get the same students every week. And then, having your roster ahead of time is really helpful. Our artists do actually study it before they go in your classroom. It's really helpful for getting, for them to learn children's names, as well as if the first couple weeks, if you've got some name tags the students can wear for the first couple weeks. We have some people on staff. I don't know how they manage to remember all the students' names, but we have some pretty remarkable name name recognition on some of our staff, and others like me not so much and can use all the help that you can give. And then again, same information about, on that questionnaire, there's a spot where you can share, accommodations and specific needs for students. as well as cultural classroom culture and home languages and all different things that can help us to plan for residency success. And then during art time, we invite you to join us at the tables. It's an opportunity for you to sit down and observe and reflect and absorb kind of the way we do things and think about, how you might try these things once our 14 weeks together are done. We do ask though, if you come to the tables, just to kind of push back on that impulse to show students, quote unquote, how to do something, just to remember that, our goal is to create opportunities for students to be self-directed and to have support, be peer supported as much as possible when you are exploring the materials. And then just remember, it's okay, that there's no predetermined outcome or output of what this art product's supposed to look like. So we want to give children the space to create that. And if our adult eyes aren't seeing it, it's okay. So long as they're at the table and creating, they don't need to be making anything in particular. So it's all right to kind of sit back and we give them the space to do that. And then again, that same conversation around, if you can help us at the tables to phrase things as tell me about what you're creating and opening that dialogue versus, the value judgments. And then, oh, this is a big one, supporting with documentation. When we're in the moment and teaching, it can be really hard for us to take those photos. It can be really hard for us to annotate the verbal descriptions of their art. So if you have a notebook or if you've got a Post-it pad, you can write down verbatim quotes of what children say, or if you can take those pictures, your help with that is incredible. We are so grateful for that. And we'll feel free to share those images with us too. We really love to have them. And here's our last thing. We have something special this year. We have some grant funding that is actually going to pay for our artists' time to do 1 to 2 additional hours for each classroom they're working in, where they could support you directly with some one-on-one support. So this could take the form of even just some simple conversations outside of the classroom with questions or deeper conversations about our approach. If you wanted to design your own process-oriented art engagement and wanted some artist support in doing that, or maybe you want to make, an art station in your classroom and need some help choosing the materials that you would put in it that would allow for being open-ended while being easily managed by you. And then if you wanted support with documentation or making a bulletin board and that making learning visible style, that's another way that you could arrange that support. Or if you wanted to have some family engagement, like a family art homework thing or a family day in the classroom, we can support you in doing these things. So your teaching artists will connect with you about that. And I'll also send out, an email reminder that that's available to you. If for any reason our artists are scheduled to be in a different classroom right after yours, or they are working somewhere else during your break times, I'm also happy to step in with that support as well. My schedule's more flexible than my team's. So if the support from your actual artist is untenable for schedule wise, I'm here to help you. So however we want to do that. And now I think I will stop the recording and I'm going to stop the share and we'll just have some time for Q&A. But you all have my email address from the many emails I've already sent you. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. I love connecting with you all. I love problem solving. I love troubleshooting. I love hearing glowing positive feedback as well. So I love to chat. So reach out to me at any time. And then I'm going to, so I'll stop our share. I'm going to stop our recording for Q&A. For those watching this recording later, you reach out at any time to me with questions. All right.